Thank you guys so much. My name is Gabrielle Brooks, and I am excited to be here in conversation with you for UAC Artist Workshop Session 4. Today we have our wonderful Memphis-based artist, Brandon Guy Marshall here. He has completed several projects with UAC, has also transitioned into the space of full-time entrepreneurship of mural making, right? And doing this thing full scale. So we're excited to talk more about that today, as well as getting into the topics for our session, which are the continuation of what we talked about, session 3 for our request for proposals. So we're getting into selection committee details. We're talking a little bit more about the proposal process itself and just getting some really great, wonderful insight from our artist who has been there and done that. So thank you for joining us, and let's get into it. So who are we? Urban Art Commission is a nonprofit. We are an arts nonprofit in the sector of public art, so we are committed to creating opportunities for artists and neighborhoods to connect and shape spaces together. And we create opportunities to do that. So if you notice, our executive director role is blank right now. We are in the process of searching for a new executive director. It's been really exciting. I am so grateful to have such wonderful leadership and board leadership who have been handling that process very well for us. And it has come down to 2 final candidates that we are really excited about. And so we will be making that announcement soon, hopefully before the end of this year. My name is Gabrielle Brooks. I'm the Communications and Development Manager. We have an Operations Manager, Mallory Key, and 3 Program Managers, Richard Eccles, Travis Washington, and Kayla J. Smith Hardy, who actually just recently was married. And so congratulations to her. But our team is doing some really great work, and shout out to the rest of them who are not able to join us today, but are constantly, and that's because they're constantly doing work. So again, more about us. We were founded in 1997 through the establishment of the Percent for Art program, which is a program that's kind of, it's a national program. It's a model that's happens in a lot of different cities, but basically there is an allocation of funds from the city's capital improvement fund, so anything that's helping grow our economic development, our structures here, as that's happening, a percent of those funds is given to UAC to manage and steward our public art collection here in Memphis. And so we oversee the development of large-scale murals and sculptures, as well as maintaining our movable collection, which is a program that was started to maintain the city's actual collection of works, just previously completed works. And so we actually just had a call to artists for that. I'm not sure if any of you guys saw it or applied, but it was a great opportunity to basically have your work purchased by the city. We were purchasing works anywhere from $500 to $5,000, I think. And so there was a allocated amount of money for that. And so we are excited to announce the selected artists from that call soon, because that is wrapping up. And so if you see these projects around town, there's there's over 130 UAC projects around Memphis, not counting the airport as a project that has many, many pieces of artwork even inside of there. So lots and lots to see, lots to do, and you guys are here to add to that. So thank you for joining us. Our mission, again, is to create spaces for artists and neighborhoods to connect and shape spaces through public art. And our vision, UAC aspires for art to be integral to a thriving and equitable Memphis. So basically, as Memphis grows and shifts and changes and becomes its best self, we want the artist community to be able to do the exact same thing. And yes, so that was a quick just overview of who UAC is. We do this at the beginning of every workshop just because we've been having such different faces every time. And so I hope to see you guys at session 5 again, just throwing that out there. But we're gonna move into a recap of session 3. So last session was Request for Proposals Part 1, which was a continuation in the series. We've just gone through our process itself. And so this workshop has been designed with the UAC public art process in mind. There are many other cities doing wonderful public art work who have different ways of approaching it. A lot of the models are very, very similar, but we pride ourselves on being very community-based, and you will see exactly what I mean getting into this recap. So we started off in the request for qualifications in session 2, which basically just asks you to tell us who you are, what you do, and how well do you do it. So a request for qualifications is the first step in our process, and ultimately allows for you to just showcase what you've got. That if we have a call for murals out or a call for sculptures, that you would maybe see that call as a muralist or a sculptor and say, okay, I've completed 5 murals, let me throw my hat in this game and show your work. So this is an opportunity to send your resume, your letter of interest, and your portfolio, which should have a good representation of your work. And that's something we'll be talking a little bit about today as well. So last time we talked about, after we left session 2 from request for qualifications, you move into the request for proposals. So let's say you were selected from the qualifications phase, and people are liking the work that you've done before, and they feel like that work could be applied to their actual request, their call, what they're looking for. So in this phase, you would go ahead and present your design concepts. And so by the time you've made it, request for qualifications, there's no honorarium, you're not receiving any money for that, you're kind of just showing what you've done, you shouldn't really have to do too much work, and so there's no honorarium attached to that. Request for proposals, there is an honorarium. It's based on the budget, so it's relative to the scale of the project. However large the budget is, the honorarium kind of is in tandem with that. And so this is when you start to get into the weeds of what the neighborhood or the private project is looking for. So this is where you present your design concepts, and you've done some work, some research, some thought, and created something specific for this thought process, and so you will be compensated for that work, and that's why you receive an honorarium. So we talked about design concepts, what makes a good design, clarity of story and narrative, cohesive thought, including mock-up examples. So Tony Hawkins, who was our guide through last session, he shared a lot of his work, and this image that you're seeing here is an example of something from his proposal for the Westwood area. We have a program called Neighborhood Art Initiative, which is open right now, and it basically is an initiative to put public art in spaces that have not received public art thus far, or have historically been not highlighted or not invested in when it comes to public art. And so it is very rewarding because it's an opportunity to tell the story of a neighborhood and to really do research and become like an advocate or an ambassador for this neighborhood a little bit. And so Brandon Marshall is a part of this NAI program right now, and it's just been really fun to watch your concept come to life. And again, we will get into those details. So so we talked about Tony Hawkins' concept, and he gave us more into it. So he is originally from the Westwood, Whitehaven area, so he had a little bit more of a relationship to this neighborhood, which is why I think he ultimately won this commission, because he was able to really tell the story, knew the neighborhood, really connected with the committee. And so that's kind of some of the things that we'll be talking about today. in last session, we covered materials. So when you're thinking about your proposal, you want to think about your materials used, and maybe even, Brandon, you could speak to that a little bit, maybe about when you're thinking of proposals, project proposals, how do you think about the relationship to the space, where it's going in, how you're going to have to prepare for that, and materials that you use that may not always be what you thought you were going to use.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to the site visit, and I think a lot of that just comes down from being consistent in your practice. You know, I think everybody has a different way that they like to do things, and that really just comes from trial and error a lot of times, and consulting other people. I mean, for me, my primary focus is mural making, and I think that when I see a job that I'm going to do, first I base it off of the design, and then secondary factors are like, what is the texture of the wall? Is the wall brick? Is the wall smooth? Which way does the light hit the wall? Is it a south-facing wall? How many hours of light is it going to get? My main preference is spray paint, because it's just faster and you can cover a lot of square feet with that way. But it is something to think about, like if there's going to be a really detailed part of the mural, then maybe I'll think about like brushwork, and maybe if the whole mural is very detailed, then I'll think about going all brush. And there's a certain point for me, like looking at walls, where it's not big enough to use spray paint, but it's like the wall is too small to use exclusively spray paint. So it's kind of a difficult thing, but yeah, I think really just being consistent in your practice and being disciplined in your practice is going to inform a lot of the way that you choose the materials. And choosing materials that are going to be archival is really important in public art. It's very important that you choose, even if you spend a little more money out of your budget, use the best stuff you can get. Use the stuff that's going to last the longest. Because maybe you cheaped out a little so you could save some money on your budget and use some cheaper materials to save, but the pigments aren't as strong, the sun's going to damage it. You want to think about public art as being like, what is this going to look like in 10 years? Mm-hmm. So kind of all of those things are things that I factor in when choosing materials.
That's a really great point to bring up too, because part of the proposal process that people love to see is a maintenance contingency plan, and just how will we continue to take care of this work after you've created it. And maybe that's not so relevant depending on the call, right? Maybe you're doing a temporary artist commission, and so the work is supposed to be temporary. It's not supposed to last. But if it is supposed to last, then definitely what you said of thinking about the archival factors in the materials that you're using. Will they withstand the test of time? You know, if you live near a place that floods often, you might want to consider that. Or if we're here in Memphis, it gets really hot in the summertime. So if you were a sculptor, you might take into account that your piece, if it's super reflective, it could blind people on the side of the highway if you have chosen, some really high shiny, high gloss aluminum something or other. And I recently read an article about that happening, and that they had to move the piece from where it was located because it was causing consistent crashes in that area. So yeah, materials are very important to think about. We talked about budget a lot last time too. And so in front of you, you'll see some handouts from Creative Capital. They are a wonderful resource for artists of all disciplines, all mediums. And they just have a lot of sample budgets that we have been able to link here. We're going to link them online as well for our viewers. But you guys have a printout with you, and so you can take time to review that. But you'll see here a example from Tony Hawkins' proposal again for Westwood, how he was able to take that total budget that was proposed and then go down line by line and analyze, assess what he would need, and ultimately pulling out 10 to 20% for contingency, always thinking about contingency. So that's just your oops, what if money fund, thinking about anything from, you know, you might be a very organized person, pride yourself on that, but hey, in 2019, 2020, COVID arrived, right? And so anyone who was organized, prepared, ready, you know, had all their things, all their ducks in a row, they had to plan again, right? And so I think even that we've seen a change in the way that artists handle their budgets, prepare for things happening, and having, and even maybe even including a larger portion of their budget for contingency, thinking about things like pandemics now that we know that that is relevant and real. So this is just another budget example from Kong Wei Peng, who completed the I-40 underpass sequin mural. If you haven't seen that mural, it actually was a victim of COVID delays. And so that was something that Kong Wei, again, having contingency money in place and UAC being able to be there to support, we were able to figure out the logistics on that and find the workarounds even when COVID was occurring and a lot of people and government organizations and entities weren't able to move as fast as normal. There were delays on fabrication, things like that. And so each one of these little tiny sequins is an individual little sequin that had to be applied and placed on here. And so, yes, we help do all of these things. We are here to support and uplift in any way that we can, and we help with fabrication, finding the fabricators that you need, whether that be local, national, or international, and including people like Brandon Marshall, who have also served as helpers and fabricators and installation needs when we've needed assistance like that. We do go back and lean often on our artist community, and we also pay for those opportunities as well. So there are lots of ways to get involved with UAC. If it's not on the front end with a commission project, it could be an offering of your services. So again, it's always great to meet new artists and know exactly what it is that you do so that we can further our Rolodex of people to call on when we have opportunities like that.
I just want to say, yeah, show up, volunteer, like show up, be a person who's around, like you'll learn, you'll meet people who can help you. Just show up and participate, yeah, for sure.
I'd never been on a forklift, or anything like that before, and Brandon, I think that was maybe the first time we actually really met, and it was kind of the pandemic, and there was a snowstorm, and we were at Porter Leaf.
Yeah, doing polytab.
Yeah, doing polytab installations. I had never even heard of polytab at that time. And so again, right, just being there, being on hand, you get to have these experiences, these one-off experiences that if you weren't showing up in these spaces, you would miss out on. I got to help Kong Wei for the installation of this sequin mural, actually, and did some painting on the columns with Travis Washington, who was actually in the back, and that was our first time meeting. So again, the artist community is small in Memphis. It's close-knit enough where you can tap your neighbors and say, neighbor, you know how to install polytab and I don't. Could you help me? You know, these are the things that we hope and we love to see as we're growing our community, just supporting one another and being willing and ready to share if you can. So yeah, we talked about timelines and again brought up that C word, COVID, and talked about how everyone's timelines just kind of like shot out the window at one point, and considered, you know, that yes, timelines, we want to create them, we want to have them. A lot of our projects, we have initial timelines listed, but again, we really urge people who are looking to become public artists that it can be a very long, drawn-out process. It can take a while, especially when it's community-based. It's different than doing a private project that you've secured as a commission by yourself, and maybe you can speak to a little bit of that and the differences in maybe working with Urban Art Commission versus finding a private project through your role and what you do.
Yeah, most of the time for my business, when someone comes to me from like a private business or something, they usually have a pretty good idea in mind of what they want. And so those processes are a little more expedited, and because I'm just consistently making the art, I can design those projects fast. But you have to think about, like a community project. Like, London was, speaking earlier, like in school, she painted a lot of nudes and stuff, and how that's probably not the most appropriate thing. Like, everybody can't get behind that on the side of a building, so there's like, that's a very like, a very like evident thing that, yeah, like community projects, they want representation, they want to be acknowledged, and a lot of times their understanding of, not necessarily, I guess understanding isn't the right word, but they don't exactly know exactly what they want, and so you just have to be present with them. And like a good community, so this happened to me one time in Louisville, Kentucky. I got picked for this community mural festival, and I was making a mural about this woman's life, and the whole time I'm going back and forth with her, going back and forth with the neighborhood, and she's sending me these photos of her life, and I made a design. Everybody signed off on it. Everybody was okay with it initially, and then I got to Louisville, and there was a picture of her and an old coworker from this chemistry lab she used to work at, and so in the design, this woman's photo is there, and I spent an entire like day and a half, 2 days painting her coworker, and then Miss Lucille came back and saw her coworker and said, I don't think that she should be up there. I want to change it. And so it's like, well, Miss Lucille, I've spent money on this, I've spent time, I'm trying to make a deadline. She's like, yeah, but I don't, So ultimately, it's like you kind of have to put your preferences. Oftentimes, it's a collaboration with you and the neighborhood. So a lot of times you have to put your preferences, just like when you work on any group project, you sometimes have to take a step back and allow, because this woman was the center of this, she was the focal point of the mural, and if she doesn't like it, what does that say about me as the artist? So that's just kind of like the community thing. You have to be a little more patient because we're just figuring it out together, whereas, one building owner or one business owner and one artist, there's only two cooks in that equation. But in a community, there are sometimes hundreds of people who want input.
Hundreds of chefs in the kitchen.
Hundreds of chefs.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But sometimes it makes for some awesome dishes that you wouldn't have cooked up on your own.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's a wonderful way to think about public art, is that it's the story of the hen who bakes the cake, and everybody is supposed to put in their hands and help, and if you didn't help, then hey, that your opinion is going to the people who did help put their hands in the pot. And so I think public art, again, is what we have here, a journey. It's one that you do have to be committed to and be ready for the long haul of, because sometimes a 1-year project could turn into a 5-year project. We've had projects like that due to COVID delays, due to other things, unforeseen things. We've had a project, so I started with UAC in 2020, and one of the projects that I know for sure has suffered delays that were beyond anyone's control was a sculpture project that's going in at JFK Park, and that encountered a sinkhole. No one could have predicted a sinkhole, and no one was prepared to have to deal with the timeline shift that occurred. But, knowing what we know, doing what we do, we kind of had to just shift and pivot and find out, who are the people who fill in sinkholes? Where do we, who do we call for that? And you just never know. And even with that, right, comes a budget change, right? A contingency plan, needing that contingency funding. And even with this call, it was a little more complicated because the artist was not locally based. And so we have figured that out. Fortunately, that is under control and still happening, still underway. And we were able to find a solution. But again, be prepared for anything. Public art, you just never know what will happen. Again, opinions change, timeline shifts, opinions change. The only thing you can really count on is that change will occur throughout the whole entire process. And I just wanted to also reiterate from last time that something we've been saying over and over again throughout this workshop series is that public art is not necessarily a journey that ends in riches. It is not necessarily a rags to riches story, because again, it is very much a labor of love, maybe a community love letter. It's a thing that you do with empathy and equity in mind, and with care and concern. So maybe if you are not feeling the care and concern around a call to artists, maybe that's not the call to artists for you, right? Even if it does have a large budget attached to it and you feel like this could be the one, maybe it's not really the one because it doesn't really pull your heartstrings as much as it might need to for you to be fully invested and want to, change for Miss Lucille, who had a vision change at the last minute, and being able to be okay with that. So it's not for everybody. And that brings me to, we have a currently open call to neighborhoods right now. It's not to artists. So if you know any neighborhood collaborative program for residents, partners, organizers, any community CDCs, any organizations, leadership organizations, I will tell you that the current organizations span the gamut from community CDCs to school in Hickory Hill area. And so, and the Douglas Community Center is one of those neighborhoods that we have right now in our cohort for NAI program, and it is open now to a new group of organizations. So if any of you knows a nonprofit leader or another organization that's coming up, this money is associated with city funding, so it does have to happen on city property. And it's a perfect segue into the fact that we will be having a Neighborhood Art Initiative virtual information session Wednesday, October 18th at 5:30. You can feel free to scan the QR code. I can pull this back up later if you wanted to sign up or send that information to anyone. We really do encourage you to forward that information because it is money for organizations to do a mural or a sculpture project or any kind of public art project that they've been maybe thinking of, dreaming of, and we can help find a city location if that is a contingency for that. So please join us Wednesday, October 18th. And Brandon, we cannot find many Google pictures of you because we, again, thank you for joining us, Brandon Marshall. I pulled your bio from your website, and I also thought this was a great, fun doodle to grab because that is how I first was introduced to your work. So telling, I guess, my perspective story on you, I think I used to work at Urban Outfitters for a second, and there was one of these little guys behind the Urban Outfitters on Central, and I think that was the first time I ever saw your work. And I think from there it's gone into me being able to pinpoint this little guy around town and see him everywhere, all the way to working here at Urban Art Commission and seeing you, working with you on projects, and then correct me on the timeline, but seeing you create your full-scale mural production company. And so I would love for you to maybe tell a little bit about that story and share a little bit more before we get into the second half of
absolutely. Well, thank you for the kind words. But I started actively writing graffiti, like lettering, when I was 16 years old. So that puts me about 20 years of painting walls, of like actively. I think, I was messing around before then, but I was actively doing it for that long. And so, yeah, it was just always my passion, and that was always a place where, I was just finding myself, I was finding myself like under bridges and these places where, and then looking back at it now, like after having done therapy and things for some years, like, looking back at it now, it was like those places that I was looking to make art were a reflection of where my mind was, but I was trying to get out of it. I was trying to make something beautiful in this dark place and in these dark places. So I had all this experience like going through school, and I chose graphic design as a career path. It took me about 6 years to get through the graphic design program at U of M. And by the time I was getting close to graduating, I saw that Urban Art Commission had a call for muralists, and they were trying to do a mural program. And, mural experience was preferred, but not necessary. And I painted a ton of graffiti art up to then, except I hadn't painted a ton of murals. I'd painted a few murals, but so I was fortunate enough to get into that program, and that program changed my life. And ultimately, I took some of that money and invested into a home for myself. And that program changed my life. And I'm really proud of the fact that, just of my roots in graffiti art, because it was just like such a time where it was so important to me, and I felt like just not seen or heard or understood by my peers and the people around me. And so just to evolve into where it is now, like I feel like it's been my wildest dream. And so, with all that being said, I would just encourage you guys to dream as big as you can with this stuff, because, a few years from now, maybe you guys will be reverse roles and you think, I should have dreamed bigger, So anything is possible. And this little moniker guy, I was like writing graffiti actively, which is, like mostly a word. You choose a name and then you put that name everywhere. And then that kind of lost meaning for a while because it's kind of juvenile, just like writing your name over. And then so I started writing. I'm really big into the blues, and specifically Delta blues and music. And what I like about the blues is that it's honest and straightforward, but it contains a lot of truth and a little bit of lyrics. So I started writing these lyrics next to this guy, and people really resonated with that. And I liked the way that people seem to be uplifted by that rather than just reading my name, so I don't actively put that guy up as much anymore, but I still do. And
there's one in my office on my whiteboard.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm never erasing it off.
Cool. But it's been a journey, to say the least.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. That's even more than I knew about that journey. And I think, I don't know, maybe that brings us a little bit to selection committee and proposals, right? So you went from doing this kind of guerrilla style artwork to uplift others all the way down to back in the corporate sphere of artwork and having to do selection committees and make a proposal to uplift the community. And so maybe even just starting off with, I know you have a longer history with UAC than I do. And so maybe if you could talk us through a little bit. So I'll start off by saying what a selection committee is, right? So each UAC project, both private and public, has its own distinct selection committee. So a selection committee for us is a committee of members that is made up of 2 neighborhood representatives, 2 practicing visual artists, 1 partner or client representative, and 1 architect. And so that is mainly our makeup for our private projects. whoever is incorporated with that. And then also for our percent for art projects, which is our public art, we're getting our percent for art from the city funding. And those consist of 2 visual artists, 2 neighborhood representatives, an architect, a non-voting city engineer, and a lot of other stakeholders. So for us, stakeholders are just anybody who's interested in the project, who's got maybe a hand on the project in some way. It could even be someone who plans to work in that space afterwards, someone who has historically had ties to that space. Maybe if we're talking about like an older neighborhood with a historical church or something, maybe it's the old pastor, the first person to lead it or whatever. Someone who just really is hyped up about that project is a stakeholder. And so thinking about that and your transition into this sphere, the public art sphere, community driven, has that always been an easy process to go through? Was it ever a little harder to have to do that and then get, another committee to approve at the end, the PAOC committee, which we'll get to in just a moment, but wondering how that's happened for you.
For like applying and just like in interactions with
UAC, with any
Yeah.
with any mural organization.
I mean, I think it's like it's what you said, of the analogy you gave of the story of the hen, right? Like it's just kind of who shows up. So sometimes the neighborhood representatives have some kind of background in art, and sometimes they have no background in art. So, I think a good rule of thumb is that you want to keep things simple and keep it to where, like someone who knows nothing, like day one art, but they're just really down for the neighborhood. They want good things for their neighborhood so that they can understand it, but also someone who is an architect or someone who's gone through art school and knows all these things. You want to make it to where both of those people can understand it and just keep it simple. That's my best advice. And, just know if you have difficulties with one, and like neighborhood representatives sometimes will be like, well, I don't like the color blue. Could you make it this other color green? And, in your head, you're like, well, that's going to mess up the color theory because, and it's just like, just keep it simple. And if you do have like, it's not your time, just know that just keep applying. The more seeds that you throw out there, something will bloom. Plant reference, that was for you. Yeah, but just keep throwing seeds, and just shake hands, smile, make eye contact.
These are all really great. I think that, well, you answered 2 things for me. One was or two great points. One point being that not all of the people who are making up these selection committees are giving anything other than opinion-based facts, right? They may never have stepped in an art classroom in their whole lives, but again, right, influenced by my favorite color is green, so I love all the green pieces here, and I don't love any pieces that don't have green. And that could just be the outcome for that project. And if the whole committee has been swayed in that direction, I can't lie to you and say that that was a fine artist group of people who made a fine artist decision, right? They made an empathetic, heartstrings, opinion-based selection that goes with their neighborhood, and that is what they feel represents their neighborhood. And so I like to remind artists that this selection process for UAC, I can't speak to any other art selection process, but for UAC specifically, I love to remind artists that this is not like a yours was bad and this one was good type of scenario. Like it normally is never that. It's always coming down to just what fits this neighborhood the best.
So many factors.
Yeah, so many things. And it might not have anything to do with your skill or talent level. It literally could come down to, we love trees and Brandon Marshall paints the best trees we've ever seen. And that's it, Yeah. And so again, this is not something where you should take away like sadness from not receiving these projects. I think being more in the mindset that it really is almost like it's almost like you as an artist are a lawyer giving a pro bono opportunity. If you think of it like that, and writing, giving a gift to a community that you really love and care for, I think that it will serve you well throughout the entire process. And so, yeah, I put in a little bit of your proposal to help you have a little bit of more tied to that last slide. But this is from Brandon Marshall's proposal for the Hickory Hill NAI project that he's currently working on. They are completing bus shelter enhancements. And so I will toss it to you so you can tell a little bit more about that.
Okay, so I think to your point about, don't apply for these things. How we doing on time?
We're good. We got 30 minutes.
So yeah, don't apply for these things unless you're excited about them. So much of what I do in my business is people are like, hey, I want a picture of Elvis Presley on the wall. I don't want to paint Elvis Presley. I don't like this guy's music, but I just do that because that's what the job is. And I'm usually not extremely excited about what they're telling me to paint. But for this project, I was like, I'm going to submit this project because this is what I think would be, I'm excited about this. And I think ultimately that was part of the reason I got chosen for this, because I think I communicated, I want to do this, with you guys. But so more or less, it's in Hickory Hill, these bus stops. And I was driving down the street and I saw this kid dancing at a bus stop. And it just inspired me, lifted me up, because I was because I have a background in dance as well, and breakdancing and some other hip hop stuff. And so this project was in Hickory Hill specifically. And this is a friend of mine I used to work at a dance studio with. His name is Terrence. He goes by G Nerd. He does jukin'. You guys know Memphis jukin'. Mm-hmm. So, and he's from Hickory Hill. So I called him. I was like, hey, do you know some other people who would be willing to pose for these bus stops and that have ties to this neighborhood? And he said he could, and he rounded those people up. So this is a collaboration between me and him, and we're gonna have these things cut out of metal, and then I'm gonna paint these and mount them to the sides. And there's gonna be these plaques with QR codes so that when you are at the bus stop, you scan the code, it's going to take you to a channel where you can see performances by each of these people, and then they're also going to be able to add to the playlist. So the whole thing, I think there's a lot of synergy about Hickory Hill, about movement, right? The bus is about getting from point A to point B. That's where these arrows come from. And just celebrating this thing that is world renowned now. Jukin is worldwide. There's people all over the world that are trying to emulate this dance, and that's something that young people in Memphis, in neighborhoods like Hickory Hill, invented, and I just want to give them their flowers now, So it's such an amazing project. I'm so excited about it. Spoke to the fabricator last Thursday and hoping to have these things cut out very soon. But yeah, just so much. And for me, I was lucky on this one because the neighborhood and the committee just kind of was I had a couple of people who had pretty strong criticism, but a lot of people were like, yes, we love it. We think that's a great idea. And so it's just so affirming because I've had this idea for a long time, I've had this similar idea with dancers and QR codes. I've been funding these projects for 3 years out of my own pocket, paying video people. Because I'm I know that there's something to this about it could be more than just a two-dimensional thing. It can take you to an internet link, to a performance. You can share that with your friend or post it to Facebook, and then that brings all this awareness for the neighborhood. I'm this is a good idea. I know it's a good idea, but I'm just waiting for the right time. And sometimes it does take, it doesn't mean your idea is bad. Your idea might be great, but it's just you have to wait for the right time. And so finally, this was my seed that sprouted, and I couldn't be more excited about it because again, so often the client is telling me what to paint in my business, And this is like one of those times where I'm just, I'm excited for this. And I'm nervous too. I have a healthy anxiety, I think, about it. So I know that's what lets me know I'm on the right track, you know. But yeah, I'm very excited about this one.
Is this one of your first sculptural pieces? Like, what made you decide to propose a metal cutout sculptural piece as opposed to maybe just, you know, painting directly onto the side or affixing something in which you did your normal tradition and going a fabricator route, right? So again, wanting to make sure that artists are hearing. So we've had some of these concepts come up in previous sessions, but something that was new to me in the last 2 years, I'm a photographer by trade, and I did not know that I didn't have to learn how to weld and do metal work to get things done or to become, you know, take a foot into the sculptural realm. I could go through a fabricator. So how was that experience for you?
So yeah, like exactly what you said. I heard from an artist named Lynn Besa. She told us that for the first time in the 2011 workshop, like, just because you are not a sculptor does not mean you can't get chosen. And like, so I'm not a videographer. You know, I've never like made a short film in my life, but I just had the idea and got together with my friends, and I was like, hey, I got $200. Could you help me out? Like, and we collaborated, and I'll buy us a pizza or whatever. And you know, I'm not a videographer, but I just had this vision, and people can get on board with your vision. What was the question? I'm rambling.
No, you're good. That's it.
Yeah.
The fact that you can get things done, even if that's not your you know, that's not your thing that you say, I'm, you know, the best at this, or that's not your traditional medium. And something you spoke to too that we've talked about here a lot too is the power of collaboration. That you cannot get any public art projects done without some collaborative point. Even if you are the only selected artist, you're working with UAC team members, you're working with contractors, you're talking to the people who are maybe building the new community center that your mural's going on. So you have to be ready to talk to people. It's nice to be shy. I think there's a question that to me is outdated, asking people whether they're introverts or extroverts, because society does not care. I think you have to be able to communicate with people. You have to be able to not show up in a way that makes people feel as though they can't take you seriously or take your work seriously. And if you are serious about your work, it would just be disappointing for you to not take yourself seriously enough to be able to just communicate your thoughts. And so I really do encourage you, if you are someone who identifies as shy or an introvert, or maybe even an extrovert in the way that you are so excited about things that you still cannot get your concepts across, invest in your friends who will listen to you. Let you, you know, if you need to go the free route and have someone, you know, treat them to a drink and let you practice, you know, speaking, telling your proposal, sharing your thought process with them ahead of time so that you are able to clearly communicate your thoughts, because you are the person who can advocate the most for your talent, for your craft, for your thoughts, your ideas, your concepts, for proposals, for anything that you're working on. And again, shout out to the collaboration point, because in many stages of being an artist, you will encounter wanting to do something that somebody else is just an expert at, and you may be someone who can do it all, right? I suffer from that same debilitating disease in which I know I can do anything, even if it takes me 6 months to do it, as opposed to someone else who could do it in 2 hours, right? I did it, but it took me 6 months to do that, and I could have been done, but we did it, right? And so again, I think when you come to this process with a different mindset in general, you are more willing to be like, I'm not spending time on this. I need to do my job, and so let me farm this out somewhere else, or let me not be so, you know, protective with my budget. Like, I know we all want to get paid. Pay yourself, for sure. Pay yourself. Advocate for yourself in any space. ask for what you think you deserve and then times to that, right? But also be willing to invest in the great materials that will help your piece last. Be willing to invest in people who can do things better than you to make sure that your piece lasts, right? Because again, it is about the longevity. Maybe the pay is not there, but the clout is there, right? Your name is in this community forever. You're always going to be a part and appreciated from this process. And so, yeah, that brings us to site visits. Sorry.
To your point really quick about being an introvert, that was something I had to work on big time very early in my career. Like I used to be sweating at the first in 2011. I got picked for that program. But you can become better at it. I'm not great at it, but I'm a better communicator now. So don't let that shy you away either. You can work on things.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you finished it, did you feel good? Did you feel like you had just broken through, or were you still like, dang, I
felt like I had arrived. Like I was like, you can't tell me anything. Like, and then I was quickly realized that I had not arrived. You know, there is no finish line. Like, it's only you versus you, and that's it's you and the person in the mirror. But yeah, I felt like, okay, like it can be done. Like it can be done. So. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that it also helps to be able to present confidently when you know what you're talking about, right? You know that when you show up for like a test or a quiz or whatever, you feel way more confident in it if you know you studied the night before versus just kind of winging it. So our version of studying is site visits. So a site visit is just another term for visiting the site or the selected location for the project. So if you hear in public art, we talk a lot about, we'll make this phrase called site-specific work. So the work just lives in a specific site location. And so site visits give artists the opportunity to take photos, familiarize yourself with the area, look at the built environment, take into account what direction the sun hits at what point in the day, if that's how you are and you want, like, you're painting a moonscape and so you want it to be in the shadows, like, go and do that research so you can see those things, and inquire about the history of the place. So there's currently another NAI neighborhood called Mallory Heights that I didn't know that the library in that area, the shopping center, I don't want to misname it, but the shopping center in Mallory Heights had a visit from Michael Jackson, like way back in the day. And he was on the roof of the shopping center, and the whole entire parking lot is just full of people, like packed out. And it looks nothing like that today. And so if you had never known about the history of the place, you would not have known that Michael Jackson did that.
No way.
Wow, all the time. So yes, so you can Google that, Memphis, Tennessee, Mallory Heights area. Michael Jackson was there on that roof of that library. And so, my God, we want to honor those types of things happening. You want to take that into account, know the history of the space, the place that you are trying to put your work into, especially if you are not from that space. Do the due diligence, take the time to consider all of these things from a design perspective, but also from a human perspective of knowing that maybe you're not in that neighborhood every day, but somebody else is, right? Mm-hmm. They're gonna have to see your piece every single day. So if you love painting underwater seascapes, and maybe that just does not gel and vibe with anybody else in the neighborhood, you will be so proud of your underwater seascape. No one else will be. So take that into consideration. Hopefully, this is just my soapbox to say for any mural festivals that you might pursue later on that do give you free range and free realm to do whatever it is that you choose, right? And honor the artist's thought process more than maybe the community, the location. You still have the opportunity to do your due diligence if you want to approach it in that way and just learn a little bit more even about the neighborhood in which that festival is taking place. I see you have a Blackout Walls Festival shirt on, so shout out to Blackout Walls Festival, which is hosted by another incredible artist, She's a Black female artist named Sydney G. James out of Detroit.
The queen.
And so
Absolutely.
there are so many wonderful Memphis-based artists who have connected with her, who have, just been there, done that, seen that, and we are hoping to continue to maybe create a bridge there between Detroit and Memphis. There are a lot of similarities between those two cities. And yeah, shout out to Birdcap, shout out to Brandon, shout out to Tunkie, who were all just up there for that happening. It looked really great. So excited to see things like that happening with a thought process that maybe is a little bit more community-based and equitable and just done with a little bit more process and thought process behind it. So yes, this is just another screenshot again of something that Brandon included in his proposal. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that you were taking pictures of spots as they look right now, but that, as the history and the landscape change over time, as things grow and change, that this will become like an archival video of what would be, and that we're okay with that, that it's okay to document growth and show change in that way. So yeah, shout out to you. And yeah, community engagement. So most of our projects, we do have a community engagement requirement that goes along with the projects. If they're community-based public art projects and not a private commission. Sometimes private commissions do ask you to do a little something too with them, but I will toss it to Brandon to share a little bit more about his thoughts on community engagement, maybe ways in which you have done community engagement before, but also this wonderful iteration that you plan here. And I know this is from a proposal that I have gotten a little bit ago, so maybe things have changed now and you've altered or edited, which has to happen too, right? Because maybe your original community engagement plan includes a school that is summertime now, your schedule's changed and all the kids are out for summer break, so you cannot work with those kids till they come back for the fall, or you have to pivot and do something else. So opening that up to you.
Yes, so I think just as a simple rule of thumb for community engagement, just create some kind of environment, whatever you have in mind, just to allow the people from the community to have a positive experience around what you're doing. It doesn't have to be anything major. And I mean, a lot of times in the past, I've had people try to come and, let's have work days where, 100 people show up and everybody wants to paint, and then like the mural starts getting, you have to kind of rein things in, and then you're fixing people's mistakes. So that is a way, like especially in the preliminary stages, that's what I would recommend. Like if you do want people to come and assist on your project, do it at a portion of the project that's like very preliminary, to where if they're messing things up, it's okay. You don't want them there in the middle or the end where you're trying to do the details. But just create some kind of positive experience for us. So Terrence is going to teach some workshops for 4 consecutive weeks in a row at some schools in the neighborhood. And then for the video shoot days, which will be later, either early 2024 or end of this year, the people that completed the workshops will be invited to perform in the video. So they'll be a part of the QR films. And then also I'm going to be working with the art class there, and I'm going to be doing some graffiti, basic graffiti workshops, where we're just going to focus on text and typography, and just give these kids a good experience, like have fun with them. And then maybe we use some of what they created in these workshops as different backdrops. But just a way so that, people were just make it memorable and positive for the people who participate, because when they see that project, those are the kinds of things they'll associate with that project, rather than just like, oh, that popped up one day in our neighborhood and nobody knows what it's about. They'll be able to tell you what it's about, and they'll take pride in it. You know, a lot of my murals have never been messed with or tagged on, and I think a big part of the reason is because, I just made it a positive experience for the community that it was involved in. So.
I think that's a really great point, that if people are able to see themselves within the work, that they relate to it more and feel more protective of it maybe, and a little bit more, feeling like it's mine, having a little bit of ownership. You want the community to feel ownership behind the work that you place in their neighborhoods, because that way people are stewarding it and taking care of it and want it to last. And so I think that that's a great measure for knowing if you have communicated your role well and achieved maybe the public art goal, is if it's well received in the neighborhood, if it is cared for, if people do, call the city to say, cut the grass around that sculpture, because they care, they want it to look well. And if it's a representation that people can get behind, right, that you'll have a response like that. I think one that I really super enjoyed, that was very much like a community hug recently, was a project that we finished at a library. And of course right now I'm blanking on the name of the library, but the project was done by Ahmad, George, and Lawrence Matthews, who have also been working on another NAI project with us. But this project was, they were creating neighborhood signage for this library, and so when they finished it, it was just very beautiful. It kind of gotten their timeline got a little dragged out too, so it was just a very beautiful experience of having a wonderful dedication for a lot of community members who had been waiting a while to receive this piece and even to brand their neighborhood, because it had such a crazy history, like very much redlining. If you know about redlining and the history of that, then that community really experienced that, and they were so proud of the way that they held it down and were able to stay in their homes and own their homes. And so, it was a beautiful story. Shout out to the artists who do those things and create those types of experiences here in Memphis. Brandon is one of those people.
Ahmad is dope. Their work is very dope. Yeah. Ahmad
Both
and
of
Lawrence
them
are dope.
I think, we have a proposal from them on our table here in the office to, if you'd like to look through what they're working on, what they're creating for the Mallory Heights neighborhood. So actually they got the Michael Jackson neighborhood. So, that brings us to our Public Art Oversight Committee, who I spoke about a little bit earlier. Just wanted to give a little more thought on them. So if you ever hear anyone bring up PAOC, that is the city's Public Art Oversight Committee. They are, it's a committee of 7 members who are appointed by the mayor of Memphis, chairman of the city of Memphis City Council, and UAC, so a combination of government appointed positions, and UAC gets to appoint a couple people. And they provide general oversight for our Percent for Art program. So all of what I just said, this entire proposal process comes down to PAOC approval. And not for private projects necessarily. Sometimes there's a combination of both. Sometimes we'll bring private project ideas to PAOC just to weigh in and get their opinion on things, or to ask about different ideas that they may have, or just let them know. But city Percent for Art money projects have to be PAOC approved. So even once the selection committee for that project has approved it, it has to also get finally approved by PAOC. And that is the committee of people who do have sometimes a little bit more fine arts background, engineering background, structural integrity type of background, so they can look at something and say, ooh, that may not work long term. You may need to think a little bit more about the engineering process, or bring me a new blueprint that shows whatever. And we are so thankful and grateful for their service. It's a volunteer position. And so, once they do that for us, we are able to then finally issue our selected or commissioned artists. So that's when, once that process has happened, that's when you see the artist announced on our social media page and our website saying, hooray, they have been commissioned for that project. And then starts the process of creating the project. So again, it can be a long process, but it is very rewarding. And I think that brings me to a couple more works from Brandon. I pulled these also from your website. They're so beautifully laid out. There is a QR code here that you can scan that will take you directly to Brandon's website to see more images of his past works. If you'd like to share a little bit about anything that you see here that you loved, a project that you really were excited to get, that you never thought you'd get, even just in the layout of 20 years in the industry. How does it feel to be getting commissions from the Grizzlies and Amazon and all these bigger names in the game?
Awesome. It feels awesome. These out of these particular ones, the ones this bottom right and then the one with the flowers there are ones that I made in Detroit, and those are the ones. Out of all those ones, I didn't make much money off either one, but it was really awesome just making work and having opportunities to work in other places. So I feel really proud. And I wish I would have dreamed bigger. And I just that's what I really want to stress to you guys tonight. Just dream big. You guys can do it. Anything is possible. Keep going. So that's all I really want to say.
Well, thank you. I am going to, with that, wrap up tonight's session. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us this evening. You can find more information about our current calls to artists in neighborhoods on our website at uacmem.org. And on our social media, our Instagram is Urban Art Memphis, and you can find more of Brandon Marshall's work on our website and at his website as well, which I think is brandongaiamarshall.com.
That's me.
Yes, so that will also be in our subscription box, link in the chat, YouTube bio. Yes, so thank you.